This is your urgent call to action. We are all called to lead in a world in chaos, crisis, and turmoil. Join a pivotal global movement for change to transform the leadership crisis worldwide. Will you play it safe, or will you wake up, step up, and speak out? Like Nelson Mandela did for South Africa and the world, we need a radical new way to think, act, and lead, leading boldly into the future. Join host Ann Pratt, a Harvard Fellow and multi-awarded businesswoman, and unlock the best version of yourself to revolutionize leadership with what the world needs now.
Greetings to all you future bold leaders. Thank you for joining us from around the world. My name is Ann Pratt, formerly from South Africa, and relocated abroad to attend a Harvard Leadership Fellowship in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. Our bold leader today joins us from the capital city of Nairobi, the capital of the East African country, Kenya. She is a well-respected media communications and gender expert, director of the African Media Hub for Strathmore University Business School in Nairobi. She has empowered business and financial journalists across the African continent and played a key role in founding and establishing the Kenyan Editors Guild, the Editors Forum, and the Media Council of Kenya. Stay tuned as we learn and explore the power of data storytelling, the why and the how of telling a story, and how it brings the numbers and the data alive. How she, together with other Kenyan media owners and journalists, joined forces with political leaders to send out a unifying message to stop the massive riots and protests just after the 2007 general elections. And finally, we learn more about how dancing with Nelson Mandela in the streets of Pretoria in South Africa forever changed the dialogue, the conversation, and the policies around women and gender empowerment, not only in South Africa, but way north on the east coast of Africa in Kenya. We warmly welcome Rosemary Okello Orlale. Welcome to Leading Boldly into the Future. So, Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us this evening on your side of the world from Nairobi in Kenya. It's just such a joy and an honor to connect with you and to be with you today. Tonight, I should say. I know that you are a gender communications and a media expert, and I know you have spent so much of your life focusing on creating the African narrative and doing that through data storytelling. Perhaps a good place to start is, what is the African narrative that you wish the world to hear?
Africa, for the longest time, actually has been built on its own narrative, which the world doesn't know. And the narrative, it's the way Africa look at even the environment, even the rivers, even the road infrastructure, the food they eat. And this, they have been capturing it in what we call oral media. And this oral media has never been captured in the traditional media or now the new platform, the digital age. So that's the African narrative. For example, that's how actually cooking with firewood is not good for the health of the women who use it. And for the longest time, they've been using it. And also cooking with firewood is impacting on climate change. So using that African narrative to educate even the African and the women themselves is critical. But the other African narrative that I like the world to know is actually what we call the grandmother story, where they used to pass wisdom and knowledge through storytelling. And these they were able to build leaders. So you see the African leaders, even the Nelson Mandela, they grew up through their grandmother story. And that's the narrative that needs to be recaptured for the world to see what were this storytelling culture that made African leaders to be who they are.
That is so profound. And you know what I was also curious about Rosemary, is that, you speak about the data storytelling and the data visualization. Can you expand a little more for us in terms of what you mean by the data storytelling? I love your analogy of the grandmother story. What is the data storytelling per se?
We are living in a digital age, and in an age where every minute we produce data. And that data, we capture them either through statistics or through empirical data or through even just using data tools like artificial intelligence. And for example, I'll give you the narrative of using data storytelling with COVID, which has affected every person in their household. Quite a number of people have been impacted. And when the COVID is being reported, it's being said that 20% of people are infected. And this shows like 0.5%. Data storytelling means that you go behind the figures and you make facts and figures have faces and voices. And these faces and voices showcase their conditions in which they live in, so that we don't only use the percentage, use the voices to actually make this percentage become a reality. And visualization can be a picture of a woman carrying a baby going to the hospital. Visualize that many women are actually taking care of the COVID-infected patients, so that people can be able to use the emotional intelligence to showcase how actually certain gender are contributing towards managing the COVID. The other data storytelling is in agriculture, whereby food security has been actually in the hands of women, but when it comes to the export, it's in the hands of men within the many African countries. Showcasing how women are planting in the farms, in the field, and that visualization and how much they contribute to the GDP, and how the fact that there's no single household, even the poorest Africa, where children sleep hungry because of a woman going to the field. That's what I mean, visualizing story, but also using data in storytelling format to impact decision making.
That's incredibly powerful. And I know you're the director of the Africa Media Hub, I think, for Strathmore University Business School in Nairobi,
yes,
Kenya. Can you share a little more? I mean, I think your mission, if I understand it correctly, is to give appropriate knowledge and also empower business and financial journalists with the right tools to report on critical issues in the global economy. Can you share with us how you've taken this very important work around data storytelling and how has that impacted your students at Strathmore University Business School?
Actually, we've trained over 7,000 students across Africa on business and finance and data storytelling. And business and finance reporting has been an area where not so many journalists found specialized in. And not so many universities within Africa actually were training. We're being trained, other parts of the world, but not within Africa. But when you find business reporting, they could only rely on what companies could give them, like stock exchange reports, financial reports, but not using it as a storytelling format. So before we started the training, we had a round table where business and finance journalists could meet with business experts to interact on the importance of telling stories from a journalistic point of view, a kind of making the public aware of the financial and business community, both from small scale to the large scale community. And this we even brought in even central bank, even IMF, as well as even IFC to be able to interact, even UN bodies. And it has been able to actually impacted on the many business journalists we've worked with, in the fact that it's make them see beyond facts and figures. It makes them actually start asking questions. When they say, oh, last year we actually, our profit increased by 20%, they're able to ask, how did it increase? What were the things that you used? Not just reporting those figures. The other thing is just engaging with them, these experts, and knowing them personally. And apart from knowing them personally, but having what we call a source that they could rely on. And using data has been one of the skills that has actually worked well for them. And data skilling in this storytelling has made business reading become like an easy to read. We've seen one of the newspaper, the Business Daily, which we partner with. We've even been able to now have what we call ordinary subjects become expert subjects. Like last week, we just did a pull out with them on the impact of small-scale business in agribusiness and how it has actually impacted ordinary lives, but also economy of the country, bringing in even big business personnel to actually comment on this. So we've seen actually it has broken the barriers that used to be there before, that when business community meets, they only invite media to just attend as listeners, not as equal partners.
Very interesting work. You know, I also know you were very instrumental in founding the Kenya Editors Guild, the Editors Forum, and I think the Media Council of Kenya. Can you share with us, you know, in your mind, what is the role of the media in supporting not only society, but also in supporting leaders in navigating some of the challenges in society? What is the role of the media?
You know, when Jefferson says that if given an opportunity to choose a country without a government or a country with a media, he'll actually choose a country with a media, not with the government. That shows the importance of the media, that the media is the engine in which the society actually operates in. Freedom of expression, sharing of information, accessing information is what is the growth of every sector, be it government, be it private sector, even civil society, even the ordinary person. That communication is key. And I always bring that, you know, sharing of information is the life itself. So media play a critical role in civic engagement, in even how we behave, even in environmental, the way we look at environment, the way we even look at these global commitments. Media is the oil that is going to make sure that ordinary people get that information. Not only access that information, but also behavior change. If you want a society that you want to transform them, like now we want a society like post-COVID, how we want to transform that society, the media is playing a critical role in making sure that wearing masks has become part of our behavior because of the way the media has been reporting that with masks, at least we are going to reduce infection rates. Washing of hands, those are behavior change communication that we need. The other area we need is empowering, accessing information for empowerment. The media is that engine that disseminates that information. The other one is creating awareness and also effective decision making and having that information, capturing the report so that you can be able to make policy out of it. The media, you might say, oh, I don't need the media, I only need communication. But even communication within an organization, that's the media. It's what we call internal communication through the media. And also the external, using other tools. And then that's why there's the public media that even taxes are being, ordinary people are being taxed to ensure that public media become active because of its importance.
That is so true. And how would you respond to the great debates that are happening, for example, in the USA today? I mean, just today, a whistleblower is testifying in the US Senate around Facebook's role in knowing that certain kinds of information that was being disseminated on social platforms are, you know, counterproductive for society, you know, threaten the safety and security of society. So how would you respond to people in terms of how media, whether it be mainline media or social media, ought to be regulated in defining how far freedom of expression of speech goes, particularly if one is also dealing with misinformation and disinformation?
In every constitution, every country, the freedom of information and freedom of the media is critical. But within the media as a professional, code of ethics play a critical role. And every media houses ensure that their journalists have got code of ethics. Last week, I remember we were discussing that time has come for us because of the global village that we're operating with the social media, that we need to adapt what we call a global code of ethics because of this, what we call flawed information, information that are not true, cut and paste information that are kind of portraying other people wrongly and also interfering with people's rights. And within the data age and digital age also, right to your data privacy is critical. And this has been explained very clearly with the European Union of its regulatory data framework that they adopted in 2019, even as Code of Data Regulatory Framework. But that doesn't mean that having social media doesn't mean that somebody needs to interfere with your privacy and doesn't need to portray you in another. You've got right to your information. And that's why the media, the role of the media, the code of ethics is critical because it creates what we call trust within the society. It's supposed to report the truth. It's supposed to be the eyes of the public. It's supposed to be reporting things that are going wrong. It's supposed to tell when things are not going right. But when that platform is now being used to actually abuse the public, it's not right.
Yeah, and interestingly, I mean, you talk about this global village and having a global code of ethics. Do you think that goes far enough? When I think of some of the other professions, whether it be the medical profession or the legal profession, I mean, there's a code of ethics, but does that go far enough, or does one also need regulation and consequences for people who violate? So is it just a code of ethics, or is it a code of ethics plus regulation plus legislation to hold people accountable and ensure they don't act with impunity?
I agree with you. It should include actually the consequences. During our time, when you're found, when you're operating effectively in the media industry, when you're found actually abusing the code of ethics, no media house could employ you. But that was the actual action being taken by the media houses. But there was also the consequences where there was the law that if you're found not reporting right. But now within that also, there's impact of it. So, but we don't want also the government to use it as a tool that they can now use to bring the media under control. It has to be done in an ethical manner. It has to be done with the stakeholders' engagement and the stakeholders' management of it. And that's why Media Council comes in. That Media Council that regulates the code of ethics. The Media Council that understand the sector. That the government will work with the Media Council to ensure that regulation become not as kind of an abuse of the freedom of expression, but a tool to make sure that we have ethical, practical ways in which media operates.
So do we need a global media council?
I think so, because of the world has become a global village, because I can be in Kenya and I can be reporting to a platform within the US. And I need to be regulated by that US Code of Ethics. If I'm reporting something that is not right, I can also be in a network that reports in another part of the world. So we need actually a global media code of ethics.
And perhaps a global media council as well.
Yes, whereby it brings all the networks of all the media council across the globe, that they become partners. So we have, like, starting with the Kenya Media Council, then we have Africa Media Council, then we have now the Global Media Council, where it has got, just like the UN. The UN is presented by various governments.
Yeah. That's an interesting, compelling thought. I know you've also spent quite a lot of time, Rosemary, in ensuring that marginalized voices are brought to the table and have a voice, have some representation. Can you share with us briefly, why is that so important from a leadership point of view? Why is it important from a societal point of view? And how have you gone about bringing those marginalized voices to the table?
We live in a society that is controlled by culture and tradition. And some of the cultures are always some negative, especially to the girl child. And this girl child, even though you can invest on them, giving them equal space in the leadership sector might not be a priority. But also the impact of the way society lives with the girl child is also can be marginalizing in various ways. So I'll give an example in other aspect whereby women leadership were not seen as a key role because they were seen women were supposed to be household. And that is northern part of Kenya. We had to take a practical approach through the media using the radio, print, and also television to ensure that is in the 90s that women were actually important leaders, not competitor, but also important leaders like men, and given space that can also bring impact to their society. So we had to sit with the community leaders, and that is the elders within the community, to try and showcase why is it that they need to readdress their culture and traditional beliefs to allow the girl child to be leaders. And you say, look, you invest in the girl child in education, and you invest in their education to go where? To become a housewife. Yes, that's their role, but also they can play an extra role by becoming leaders. So we gave example of global leaders, how they've been able to actually become better leaders. And when the constitution of Kenya was changed, whereby also the affirmative action was adopted, we said, how are you going to make sure that affirmative action? Sorry, that was 1997. Yes.
97. Okay. Yeah.
So, yes, the 1/3 gender principle that led to the establishment of the Gender Commission. So we said various communities are going to ensure that the girl child are actually taking leadership, but some areas are not going to. So how are we going to ensure this? So we started a program, a radio program called Pili Pili program in one of the local radio stations using actual local language. Pili Pili means chilies program, because it was going to be a chilies kind of a program that is going to hurt society in a bad way, but also educate them in a proper way they can eat it.
Okay.
So through that, it was able to showcase that women can become better leaders. So we started also empowering the women themselves, the importance of them to become leaders, and them as women as leaders, because we train them how to use the media, how to brand themselves, how to actually speak on the issues that affect them, how to start programs within the media, but also how, when they have issues, how to call on the media, how to write press freedom, press releases. And they were able to be open that actually many of them were not able to invest in their communities because they were not allowed to become equal investors. So they could make money, but hide them under the pillows. So with this Pili Pili program, it was able to open space for them even to access financial inclusion, become equal partners in investor. And now in that area, women have become leaders in economic empowerment and also in political leadership. They're leading various institutions across the country. And many of them, when I go back, they say that if it wasn't for your initiative, for your program, we couldn't be where we are. And I'm so humbled to see them actually becoming leaders in various aspects of the society.
That's wonderful. Just, I know in your role at Strathmore, part of the work you're doing is helping students and journalists report on issues in the global economy. From your perspective, and Rosemary, I also know you do work in leadership, important work in leadership. From your perspective, what are the current big leadership issues in the world? You talk about our global village. What are the kinds of things that kind of keep you concerned or awake?
The climate change. And the realization of SDG goals, and how leaders are working towards it, and how leaders are not paying clear attention, especially on the impact of environment and the impact of climate. We are already seeing how it's impacting in our society, impacting our communities. And we are saying that if we actually want to safeguard our environment for the future generation, we need to pay a close attention to the impact of climate change. The other area is actually the youth. Africa has got the youngest youth population, and the youth is a resource to the continent. But there's no clear policy that is positioning youth as a product that can be invested in for the continent, so they can be able to plow back to the continent the knowledge that they learn. The other area is about, of course, digital transformation. And this digital transformation is that how are we going to ensure that product from Africa also become a globally recognized product within this digital world? And how can this digital transformation also use local languages to be able to access, so that people in the rural community use it like they can use any other technology for the betterment of their lives? Yes.
Well, those are all pretty critical issues. And I was wondering in your own life, Rosemary, I mean, you've had a remarkable journey, and very often our life story is our leadership story. Can you share a pivotal moment, a life-defining moment when you were facing a really particular difficult challenge? What was the context? What was the setting? What was the challenge you were facing?
That was 2007, during the post-election violence in Kenya, whereby we had to bring the women journalists and women leaders to discuss the impact of our post-conflict on women and how it has been able to impact not only on women, but also on the displaced the women and the youth and the communities, but also finding ways in how we can report it. So I kind of identify an editor who could do a research on the role of the media in escalating conflict among the communities in Kenya, and found out that actually the media was central in the enhancement of the conflict. Because when the media reported that 2 people from certain ethnic community were killed by this ethnic community, the next day the other community will kill 4. And we said the language and the narrative we used was critical in actually addressing. So it made me actually have a round table on media and conflict reporting. They saw me actually publish a book on a guideline on conflict reporting in Africa. And the same experiences I also saw in South Sudan, whereby also community ethnic violence was play a critical role in the violence that was taking place in Southern Sudan, and the role of the media. So there are certain situations where your professionalism you put aside, where the people who are affected ask you, please, can you even give me food? Can you even give me, I need even sanitary towel, as a woman. I need access to, a health clinic. And you have to be able to actually use your humanitarian aspect of it to make sure that these women get necessary access by not only reporting, but also linking them with a relevant institution that can be able to help them. And also you'll be able to create a network for them to actually share their stories so that they can be empowered. They don't feel as victims, but they can be empowered through that.
And are these the women in these conflicted communities that were being marginalized during that conflict?
The survivors of the conflict.
Yeah. So how did you feel at the time when you learned that the media had an active role in fueling the 2007 post-election conflict? How did that make you feel?
It made me feel terrible, because this is where, when I was the Secretary General of the Kenya Editors Guild, we had a round table around it. And I remember when we realized that we had to actually go and meet the high-level leadership of the country. And on 1st January 2008, all the media houses had one headline, Save Our Nation. And it was as a result of the initiative that we started.
What were the steps that you took, apart from what you've already shared, but just in summary, what were the steps you took to pivot out of that situation? What steps did you take to, how did you go about it?
This is where the media needs to work with the leadership, and our roles are critical with each other.
And when you say the leadership, which leadership are you referring to? Are you talking
about the political leadership of the nation?
The political leadership.
The government, yes. Yeah, the government and the political party. Yeah. And so the media needs to also hear the voices of the political leadership, but not report in a way that can escalate violence, but in a way that can enhance peace, but not also to be biased in the way they report it. So the Editors Guild was playing a critical role in this area. And the Editors Guild, once they agreed on certain policy direction, their media houses followed it. And they kept the leadership in checks and balances. And when even the late Kofi Annan came to actually have the dialogue meetings, the media play a critical role in reporting those dialogue meetings. Even when he published the book, if the media has actually featured it. And now that we are going to an election next year, Kofi Annan book is now being featured very, very prominently in our media houses, that let's not go back where we came from. Let's learn from it.
So, moving on, I mean, in your young life, was there a pivotal moment for you? Was there a pivotal moment, a aha moment when you thought, this is the kind of work I want to be doing in Kenya and in the world?
Young life, I was a teacher.
Yeah.
But teaching was not my kind of life I wanted to be. But journalism was my aha moment when I went after college as an internship with the Nation Media Group. And I said, this is where I wanted to actually grow my career in. It introduces me to various ways of life. And for me, journalism was actually an everyday learning. You learn every day. You're not you're an expert on nothing, but also you have to become actually knowledgeable on everything. So it gives an opportunity to read and learn. And that's the kind of futuristic career I was looking forward to. So when I stepped in the Nation Media House, that was my aha moment that I wanted to now grow in. And my mentor, Dorothy Quayle, is still actually a revised editor with the Nation, still really played a critical role of making me who I am. Because when I went to the Nation as an intern, I found myself on Sunday Desk, where she was a sub-editor. And then she asked me, what are you interested in? I said, in writing actually narrative stories that can impact life. They said, can you start a children's page or a women's page? I said, why? Yes. So by that time, the daily newspaper, the women's page was more fashion and also styles. Then we started feature articles on women's leadership on the Sunday desk, Sunday newspaper of the Nation, and also a children's page on actually using storytelling as a way of empowering children. So I was that was my aha moment.
Yeah. And in that context, Rosemary, I'm curious. I mean, often they say with the media, bad stories sell, sell media. Given our current leadership challenges in the world, how do you think the media should change or should they change the way they are, the content and the balance of the content between bad stories of conflict and drama versus the positive stories of goodness and kindness and our everyday heroes? Where do you think this should sit? What is the balance? And obviously, the owners want to ensure that there's a decent profit and decent returns. What are the stories that we should be selling? And will good stories sell?
There's something that culture that is going within Kenya, that the media is full of bad stories. The media is full of negative stories. So you find people saying, I've stopped reading the newspaper because of the negative stories that it always portrays and the political stories. So I think we need to find a balance that even when we report on the bad story, it has to come with a solution, because every problem, everyone looks for a solution.
Yes.
And I think the 5 whys play a critical role, but now leadership. Yes. Where, what, how, when, and, it's a kind of 5 whys of is it four W's and 1 H play a critical role. But now the solution on this is where experts come in and leadership comes in. So any story has to have a solution. And if it's not a solution, has to find a directive way on where that solution can be found, or linking to institutions that can bring that solution into fore. But also find people who can be actually champions in addressing those issues and situations. Even just a dialogue voice, yes.
Interesting. So I know that, like many of us, Africans and many global citizens, Nelson Mandela has held a very special place in our heads and hearts and thoughts and often our spirit too. Can you take us back to a particular moment in time where Madiba, as we fondly called him, lit a fire or shaped you in some way?
Yes, and that was 1995. Was it 95? Let me see. No, it
Are you
was
talking about the election or the World Cup?
immediately after he was released. When actually,
1990. Yeah. He came out in February 1990, and then he was elected in April 1994.
yes, after he was elected in
Mhm.
1994.
Yeah.
That was 1995 because I remember my daughter was still very young. One of the things that he took cognizance when he was celebrating the first Women's Day, that it was August in South Africa.
That's right. Yeah.
He went outside the global cognizance of the International Women's Day and created the South Africa Women's Day in August.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember where he recognized even the women who were with him in jail and the women who were there during the tough times. Tenchi Michiwe was one of those, and dancing with the women, in the streets of Pretoria and showcasing that, without you, we couldn't be here. And that's why this day is critical for every woman in this country, for the importance role you play in ensuring that apartheid has been dealt with. For me, that was really a leader that actually took cognizance of each and every aspect that made him as a leader be who he is, and also a country to be what it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Where were you on that day? Were you watching us on television, or where were you?
No, I was there in the physical. We actually produced a special newspaper with my colleagues in South Africa. I was there with him dancing.
You were there with him dancing in Pretoria?
Yes.
And do you still have copies of that, the newspaper articles or photos that you did?
Yes, we do. I think I can look for it. I can even I'll look for it. I'll ask my colleague in South Africa. I know we have copies. I have copies somewhere. I've kept it.
So how did you feel on that day dancing with him?
It's reporting how Madiba is dancing with the women and showing what women leadership and the impact of it was critical. And when I came to Kenya with it, we also printed some of those stories in the local newspaper.
Wonderful. Do you think that message, to what extent did that message not only send a message to South Africans, but to what extent did it send a message to men and women in Kenya?
I think it strengthened the whole actually discussion about the gender and women's empowerment and the Young Platform for Action. And I think it also made so many countries take action on what gender, it kind of brought the whole argument from women in empowerment to gender and the role of gender and women empowerment. And that gender is not only a women thing, it's a society thing and how we need to look at it. Yeah. So it strengthened it. And South Africa was the first country to develop the local gender policy that was actually showcasing in the region. Yeah.
Yes. What do you think Nelson Mandela would say to the men and women of Kenya and South Africa today?
This quote of him always actually makes me reflecting that you cannot claim to be a leader in a country where majority are poor. And for me, I think Nelson Mandela's vision for Africa was to find ways in which we could address poverty from a local solution and also making sure that we create an impact in a global, but also a society where everyone has got equal chance to address the issue. Because when you talk about poor, you cannot come outside and tell me this is how to address my poverty in a region where you don't understand how I live. But you have to empower me to address my poverty and understand the ecosystem of that region to address that poverty. And that, if once I'm empowered, it can be long sustainable. And that sustainability is what is missing within the African context.
Mm-hmm. And as you rightly said, Rosemary, taking that message to the broader global community, I mean, we see incredible wealth disparities and deep divides in some of the richest nations of the world, including the United States of America, the United Kingdom, other parts, affluent parts of Europe, and many parts of the world. So what do you think his message would be to leaders in those countries in terms of dealing? I mean, I know we started this conversation around how he changed the conversation around women empowerment. What do you think he would say to those global leaders, and to what extent is women and gender empowerment linked to solving poverty?
That when by empowering women and the marginalized, you actually empower community and the society. Mm-hmm. And also you are enriching the global market. Mm-hmm. Simply because that when our leaders can be able to come together and share solutions on how they have been able to implement policies that can be able to impact their society in a positive way and empower them, then leaders can learn from one another. And Nelson Mandela was a leader that was actually ready to learn, but also was ready to be taught, but also was ready to share examples on how his experiences have been able to impact, right from the jail to the highest level as the president. And even within the UN conferences, it was able to share. And it was not somebody who was not ready to listen. So leaders who can listen to various solutions, because in the global village now, we'll find even young people getting solutions to certain problems we are facing. But are they given a chance by leaders to be able to showcase those solutions? So how can we co-create our solution in a digitized world, especially in the 21st century? Is going to be critical. But sharing Nelson Mandela leadership characteristics into the 21st centuries can be one of the ways we can address leadership challenges facing us in the global world today.
Yeah. So in your opinion, his leadership example has great relevance in the world today?
Definitely. Because he had space for the youth, he had space for the private sector, he had space for the women, the marginalized, the global community. And he was able to understand even the intra-Africa trade that now we have actually established. He opened borders within the SADC regions, how the SADC regions can be able to become one unit. So that for me was a leadership characteristic that actually foresaw how the world is a global village.
Yes, absolutely. And turning back to your village, Rosemary, some fun facts about you. What was your favorite childhood memory?
Childhood memory. It's a long time ago, but
not that long. Not that long.
As a young child, I love being with my father as the firstborn, and actually listening to my father, but also my father showing me what's important to be a great leader and how it's important to make it as a woman and not let the issues of the world deframe me. But I also learned within my peers. I played a lot of what we call childhood games.
What was your favorite game?
Wow. I don't know how you call it, but here we could call it hop, step, and jump. Those were the games.
Oh, yes. Hopscotch.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Yes, and then there was that one we played, playing mother, kind of, we call it how to cook, cooking, simple, epitomize how to cook as a woman, as a young girl, pretending you're a mother and, showcasing how if you're a mother, you can become, a cruel mother. And people saying, no, you don't need that cruelty in the motherhood. So, but we were young children, kind of playing, small childhood play games. But the other one was actually football. I enjoyed playing football.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Did you play? Was it commingled? Did the girls and the boys play football together?
Yes, it was mingled. By the times we found ourselves girls only, with that we could pretend to, how to be, epitomizing how boys were playing their games, and we say we can play better than you. Of course, we had the netball, but football was one of the fun because it allowed us to run so many, longer distance as opposed to net. So
Yeah.
that was really exciting at that time.
Yeah. What did your father do when you said he really taught you about leadership? What did he do? What lessons did he share?
He was a civil servant working in what we call by that time government press under the president's office. So they're in charge of printing, government secret reports, those government reports, cabinet reports, such kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he used
And
to. He was a civil servant.
but he was
Sorry.
in the so your love and passion for the media, in a way, did he shape that for you?
Yes, he did, because he could come with these publications home and we could read them before they're released. And so we could ask. And one time he took me to showcase. By that time, the printing process was still old system, whereby it started with plates, electroset, and you go to dark room and among others. And it was really, interesting to see how production of a newspaper or a magazine could go through a process. So it
Yes.
was interesting and
Yeah.
intriguing at the same time. Yeah.
And what do you think his biggest leadership lessons were? The biggest leadership lessons that stuck with you? What really stands out for you in terms of what he shared with you and taught you?
As a firstborn, and I was an only child for a while, but he never treated me as a girl. He treated me as a child that had a proper leadership. And he never he never made me think that I was a girl child. He made me see you're Rosemary and you can do whatever it is. So I found myself doing difficult tasks because I had nobody else to compete with, because he gave me the space. So he instilled those leadership skills in me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So in our kind of final closing moments, Rosemary, what final takeaways would you share with current and aspiring bold leaders in the world, people who care about the fact that this world is changing so rapidly and hard to deal with the complexity of what we are facing? What are your final takeaways?
But leadership, there's a lot of dynamics within the leadership sector. But leadership as a skill is something that has to be inbuilt and inbuilt. It has to be a passion. And leadership doesn't mean that you have to be a political leader. Leadership means that you have to excel and be an example in any field you are in. You can be a leader even as a sweeper. You can be a leader even as a businesswoman. You can be leader as a politician. You can be a politician, but you're not a leader. You can just be a politician. So leadership means standing out, branding yourself, showcasing what you're passionate in, and actually actualizing it. Like Nelson Mandela was passionate about inequality and apartheid, and he stood for it to the fact that he went to jail. What it is that you're ready to sacrifice as a leader that can stand out, can be identified with you, that when they see you, they see the thing that you're passionate about. And that's what we call leadership that is going to transform the world, and leadership that is going to change the society, especially the young people, because it will impact them positively.
And when you say inbuilt, are you saying that leaders are born when you say it's inbuilt, or are you saying leaders are born and nurtured? So do you think that leaders are born, or do you think leaders are made?
That has been an argument that even within academia, people have written as leadership in born or nurtured. But everyone is a leader. I'll use the biblical way that, you're wonderfully and beautifully made by God as yourself. And so there's nobody in the world like you. So you are already a leader in your own right as an individual. Then you nurture the skills using the ecosystem you pass through. That is the schooling and the institutions that you go in and the people that bring you up. then you identify a passion that you can be able to actually showcase, that interests you, that impact you, that bring a difference in your life to be a leader. Because people who go into politics says, I was interested in it. People who go into even certain leadership skills says that, because normally when we mentor students and coach them, I say, when you go to intern in a certain organization, you can be going to intern as an accountant or as a data scientist, but you'll be thrown into making tea. That doesn't make you a lesser person.
Yeah.
But by making that tea, you make tea in a way that data scientists would be able to make it, so that you stand out as a leader within that making tea, that you're passionate in your way in which you implement and produce and impact your environment. And that's what we say leadership is all about.
Well, Rosemary Okello Orlale, thank you so much for sharing your beauty, your passion, and your impact in the world, not only in gender and communications and media, but really as a global citizen who truly cares about making this world a better place. So thank you so much for joining, sharing your insights, your lessons, and your perspectives.
Thank you so much, Anne Pratt, for this opportunity. And it's been an honor to speak to you and to give me this space to share my views and also to just interact with you. It was when I was told you are coming to interview me, it was just also the aha moment for me, that who am I to be interviewed by Anne Pratt? But here I am, and thank you for this opportunity, and thanks again.
A privilege. Friends, media power is a hot topic. The public narrative and storytelling inspire action. When powerful public narratives are delivered on prominent media platforms, protests erupt, governments change, and corporations redefine their purpose and change strategic direction. Listening to the understated but formidable Rosemary Okello Orlale, Director of the African Media Hub of Strathmore University Business School in Nairobi, Kenya, and also the winner of the 2004 Africa Best Female Journalist Reporter Award, reveals much about media power, the public narrative, and why stories matter. Exercising leadership requires you to manage media power, to build that public narrative, and to become a masterful storyteller. This was on public display in Kenya in 2007 during the horrific post-election violence. Politicians and the media united. Public officials aligned with prominent media platforms. And one fine day, every Kenyan citizen woke up to one national front page headline: Save Our Nation. A unified and unifying message. Our message, our messaging, our words, and our media echo chambers can start wars or build peace, can create unity or fuel hate, and can deepen despair or inspire hope. Media power and managing media relations enable us to build and spread that public narrative far and wide, to win that public debate, win fast and win big, using traditional and digital, national and international media platforms with authority worldwide. The public narrative and storytelling are a leadership art that build national and international movements. Harvard Kennedy School professor Marshall Gantz reminds us that crafting and building public narrative with powerful stories allows individuals, communities, and nations to communicate those values that motivate their choices, that construct identities, and inspire bold action across divergent and diverse countries, cultures, classes, professions, faiths, and generations. Stories engage the head, the heart, and the hands. They instruct, they inspire, and they motivate. The public narrative, it's an intermarriage of three different parts. The first is the story of self. It's your story, your why are you being called, your experiences, your values, and why you are doing what you do. The second is the story of us. It's our collective why. It's our common story. It's our values, our experiences, and defines why we collectively do what we do. And the third part is the story of now. What is the current pressing challenge that requires bold action? Three critical questions. Firstly, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? Secondly, what is our collective why? Why do we do what we do together? And thirdly, what is that critical, urgent challenge that requires bold action and bold choices? So friends, like the Kenyans of 2007, you too can exercise leadership by mobilizing media power and using that public narrative to translate values into action. You too can become a masterful storyteller and ensure that you are building peace, creating unity, and inspiring hope. So until next time, remember that leading boldly is about making thoughtful, clear choices. And bold leadership is about taking bold action, just one small step at a time, one step for you. But together, with media power, public narratives, and compelling, engaging stories, a giant step for humanity. Take care and take thoughtful, bold action.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leading Boldly into the Future. Please find links and connections mentioned in this show in our blog and never miss an episode by subscribing at anne-pratt.com. That's ANNE-PRATT.com. May these insights from inspiring industry leaders, remarkable disruptors, and courageous champions of change bring forth a brand new you, emboldened, empowered, and ready to inspire hope. Come back soon, share with your friends, sign up on anne-pratt.com and join our movement for change. Why? Because the world needs you to lead boldly too.